The sound wasn't a gunshot. It was wetter than that. A sickening, dry crunch of bone that traveled through miles of cellular network and hit me right in the chest. My daughter didn't just cry out. She made a noise like a dying animal, a high-pitched, broken wail that scraped against the speaker of my phone. Then, silence. Heavy, breathing silence. And finally, a man's voice, calm, steady, terrifying, whispered 3 words that froze the blood in my veins. She's still awake. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. My phone was pressed so hard against my ear that the plastic felt like it was cutting into my skin. "Ruby," I shouted. "Ruby, answer me." Nothing but the line going dead. The office on the naval base usually smelled like stale coffee and floor wax. In that second, it smelled like panic. Being a Navy SEAL teaches you to control your heart rate. It teaches you to compartmentalize fear, to lock it in a box so you can pull the trigger. But there is no training manual for hearing your 16-year-old daughter being tortured on a pocket dial. My keys were in my hand before my brain even processed standing up. The drive home was a blur of red lights ran and speed limits shattered. My truck tore down the interstate, the engine screaming, but it felt like I was moving through molasses. Every second that ticked by was another second of silence from Ruby's phone. I called Natalie, my wife. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight. "Logan, where is she?" I didn't say hello. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Where is Ruby?" She's at practice, Logan." "Why are you yelling?" "I just heard her." I choked out, swerving around a semi-truck. "I heard her scream, Natalie. Someone hurt her. Someone was with her." "You're crazy," Natalie said, but the dismissal came too fast. Too sharp. "You're at the base. You're stressed. Ruby is fine. Call her," I demanded. "Call her right now and patch me in." "I can't. I'm driving," she said. "Driving where?" "To the hospital." The air left my lungs. "You just said she was at practice." "Logan, please." Her voice cracked, shifting from defensive to something else. Guilt? Fear? "Just get to St. Jude's." The sheriff called me. There was an accident. An accident. The word hung in the air like smoke. Accidents are screeching tires and loud crashes. Accidents are chaotic. What I heard on that phone wasn't chaos. It was controlled. It was a man watching my daughter suffer and commenting on it. I hung up and floored the gas. When I pulled into the emergency room bay, the scene was wrong. Usually, an accident involving a kid brings chaos. Nurses running, parents screaming. But the sliding doors stood open, and parked right in the front, blocking the ambulance lane, was a black sheriff's SUV. Sheriff Blake. My boots hit the pavement hard. I knew Blake. Everyone in our small town knew Blake. He was the kind of lawman who smiled too much with his mouth and never with his eyes. He played high school football 20 years ago and still walked like he was wearing the varsity jacket. I burst through the ER doors. The waiting room was empty except for 2 people. My wife, Natalie, sat on a gray plastic chair. She wasn't crying. She was staring at her hands, her posture rigid, like a statue terrified to move. And standing over her, one hand resting possessively on the back of her chair, was Sheriff Blake. He looked up as I stormed in. His uniform was crisp, pressed tight against his chest. He didn't look like a man who had just responded to a gruesome emergency. He looked like he was hosting a town hall meeting. "Logan," Blake said. His voice was a deep rumble, designed to make people relax. "Glad you made it back so fast." I ignored him. I went straight to Natalie. "Where is she?" Natalie looked up. Her eyes were red, but dry. She looked at me, then her eyes flickered to Blake, then back to the floor. "She's in surgery, Logan. Her legs. God, her legs." "What happened?" I knelt in front of her, grabbing her hands. They were ice cold. "Tell me exactly what happened." "She fell," Blake answered for her. I stood up slowly, turning to face him. We were the same height, but I carried my weight differently. He carried his in his chest and ego. I carried mine in muscle built for survival. "She fell." I repeated. "Hiking," Blake said, nodding solemnly. "Up near the ridge." Looks like she slipped off the trail. Bad drop. 20 feet onto rocks. My deputies found her. Hiking, I said, testing the word. Ruby hates hiking. She hates the ridge. Teenagers explore, Logan. You know that, Blake said, flashing a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's a tragedy. Both femurs snapped. Compound fractures. But she's alive. You should be thanking God. I heard her, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Blake's smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed just a fraction. Excuse me. She called me, I said, stepping into his personal space. It must have been a pocket dial. I heard the break, and I heard a man. The air in the waiting room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Natalie made a small, choking sound. Logan, don't. I heard a man, I said again, locking eyes with the sheriff. He didn't sound like a deputy helping a girl who fell off a cliff. He sounded like he was enjoying it. Blake chuckled, a low, condescending sound. That's the stress talking, soldier. You've been deployed a lot lately. Trauma does funny things to the ears. You hear enemies where there are only friends trying to help. He stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. It was meant to be comforting, but it felt like a leash. Go see your daughter when she wakes up, Blake said softly. But don't go spreading conspiracy theories. It upsets the town, and it upsets your wife. He gave my shoulder a squeeze, too hard, and walked out the automatic doors. I watched him go. Then I looked at Natalie. She was trembling now. Why did you lie? I asked her. I didn't, she whispered. You said she was at practice. Then you said you were driving. You were already here with him, weren't you? Natalie stood up, avoiding my eyes. I just want to see my daughter. She walked away toward the nurse's station, leaving me standing alone in the sterile white light. I looked down at my phone. The call log showed the time, 3:42 p.m. I knew what I heard. I knew the sound of bone breaking. And looking at the back of Sheriff Blake's head as he got into his SUV through the glass doors, I realized something else. The voice on the phone. The calm, terrifying voice that said she's still awake. I realized why it sounded so familiar. The hospital hallway was too long and too white. The fluorescent lights hummed with a sound that drilled straight into my skull. I stood outside the double doors marked Surgery Recovery, watching nurses move back and forth like ghosts in scrubs. Natalie sat on a bench 10 feet away. She hadn't looked at me since the waiting room. Her phone lit up in her lap, buzzing with a text message. She glanced at it, her face pale, then shoved it face down into her purse. Who is it? I asked. The question came out sharper than I intended. My mom, she lied. I knew the lie. I could hear the rhythm of it in her voice. After 18 years of marriage, you know when your wife is terrified. A doctor pushed through the swing doors. He looked exhausted, snapping off blue latex gloves. His name tag read Dr. Eris. Family of Ruby. We both surged forward. Is she okay? Natalie asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Eris sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. He didn't look at us with the usual doctor reassurance. He looked disturbed. She's stable. The sedation is heavy, and she'll be out for hours. But I need to be honest about the injuries. He motioned us toward a wall-mounted light box and clipped up a set of x-rays. I've seen combat injuries. I've seen what IEDs do to Humvees. But looking at the gray and white image of my daughter's legs made my stomach turn over. This isn't a simple break, Dr. Eris said, pointing to the shattered femur of her left leg. This is a spiral fracture. And here, he pointed to the right shin. This is a comminuted fracture. The bone is in pieces. The sheriff said she fell, Natalie said quickly. Off a ridge. Dr. Eris paused. He looked at the x-ray, then at me. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Hesitation. Physics is a stubborn thing, Mrs. Caldwell. A fall from 20 feet causes impact trauma, usually compression fractures. Ankles, hips, spine. He tapped the image of the spiral fracture. This is torque, he said quietly. Twisting force. Someone, or something, grabbed this leg and twisted it until it snapped. And these breaks on the shin? They're transverse. Like a direct blow from a heavy object. A bat. A pipe. The silence in the hallway was deafening. Are you saying someone beat her? I asked. My voice was deadly calm, but inside, a fire was starting to rage. I'm saying the medical evidence doesn't align with the story of a fall, Dr. Harris said. He lowered his voice. I tried to put that in the official report, but the sheriff, he insisted on the fall narrative. He said the coroner would agree with him. The coroner? I stepped closer. My daughter isn't dead. No, Dr. Harris whispered. But Blake runs this town. If he says it's a fall, the paperwork says it's a fall. I'm just telling you this, off the record. Get her out of here as soon as she can travel. He unclipped the x-rays and walked away fast, like he was afraid of being seen talking to us too long. I turned to Natalie. She was staring at the floor, her hands twisting her wedding ring. Did you hear him? I asked. Torque. A pipe. Someone did this to her. Stop it, Logan, she hissed. Please. Just stop. Stop what? Fighting for our daughter. Stop making enemies. She looked up, and her eyes were wild. Do you know who Blake is? Do you know what he can do? If he says it was an accident, we accept it was an accident. We heal. We move on. Move on. I grabbed her shoulders. Natalie, someone broke her legs in 9 places. That's torture. Why are you so afraid of him? She wrenched away from me. Because I live here. You're always gone. You're on deployment, playing hero overseas. I'm here. I have to live in this town. I have to deal with the taxes, the permits, the tickets, the everything. This isn't about parking tickets, I said. This is Ruby. I left her there. I couldn't look at her anymore without wanting to shake the truth out of her. I walked out of the hospital into the cool night air. The parking lot was empty, except for my truck and a single patrol car idling in the shadows at the far end of the lot. I walked straight toward it. The window rolled down. It wasn't Blake. It was a young deputy, maybe 22, with a face full of acne scars. Deputy Miller. I remembered him from the local gym. Evening, Mr. Caldwell, he said nervously. I want to file a report, I said. Assault. Attempted murder. Miller swallowed hard. Sir, the sheriff already filed the incident report. Case number 4092. Accidental fall. It wasn't an accident. The doctor confirmed it. The doctor isn't a crime scene investigator, Miller recited, like he was reading from a script. We found skid marks at the ridge. Loose gravel. It's closed, sir. Open it. I can't do that. Then give me the dispatch logs, I said. I want to hear the call. Who called it in? What time? Miller's eyes darted to his dashboard computer, then back to me. Systems down for maintenance tonight. Server update. Convenient, I said. I leaned down, bringing my face level with his. You're a good kid, Miller. Don't go down with the ship. Tell Blake I'm not filing an insurance claim. I'm filing a war declaration. I turned and walked to my truck. As I climbed in, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Yeah. Logan Caldwell. A woman's voice. Sharp, professional, but hushed. Who is this? My name is Quinn. I'm a lawyer. I was in the ER for a client with a broken wrist. I heard you arguing with Blake. I paused, hand on the ignition key. And I saw the way your wife looked at him, Quinn said. She looked terrified, but not of him hurting her. What do you mean? She looked like she was afraid he was going to tell you something, Quinn said. Meet me at the diner on 4th Street in 20 minutes. If you want to know what's really happening in this town, you need to stop asking cops and start asking victims. I hung up. I looked back at the hospital window, 4th floor, where my daughter was sleeping with metal pins in her bones. Natalie was right about one thing. I had been gone too long. I thought I was protecting my family by fighting wars halfway across the world. But the enemy had been sitting on my front porch the whole time. And now I was home. The diner on 4th Street was a relic of the 50s. Chrome stools, checkered floors, and the smell of grease that never quite left your clothes. At 2 a.m., it was dead quiet. I saw her in the back booth. Quinn didn't look like the small-town lawyers who advertise on bus benches. She wore a sharp charcoal blazer, no jewelry, and her eyes scanned the room like she was expecting an ambush. A half-empty cup of black coffee sat in front of her, I slid into the booth opposite her. "You're bigger in person," she said, sizing me up. "Navy SEAL, right? That's what the town gossip says." "Ex-SEAL," I corrected. "Why did you call me?" "Because Blake has been sheriff for 12 years, Quinn said, keeping her voice low. "In that time, the crime rate has dropped to near zero. On paper. But the accident rate? Skyrocketed. People fall downstairs. People drive off bridges. People trip and break their own legs." She took a sip of coffee. "He cleans things up, Logan. He makes problems go away for powerful people. And your daughter, she became a problem." "She's 16, I said, my jaw tight. "How is a kid a problem?" "That's what you need to find out. But you won't find it at the hospital. You need to go to the Ridge." She slid a napkin across the table. On it, she had drawn a rough map. "The official report says she fell at Eagles Point. It's the highest drop, but the ambulance didn't pick her up there. The dispatch log, before they scrubbed it, showed the pickup at the old service road, 3 miles south." "How do you know that?" "I have a scanner," she said with a thin smile. "And I have insomnia. Go to the service road. Look for what doesn't belong." I took the napkin. "Why help me?" "Because he broke my brother's arm 2 years ago during a traffic stop," she said, the hardness returning to her eyes. "And nobody believed us. You're the first person who might actually be dangerous enough to scare him." I left the diner and drove. The service road was a gravel scar cutting through the dense pine forest. It was technically closed, blocked by a rusted chain, but the lock had been cut. I drove slowly, lights off, using night vision goggles I kept in my hunting gear. The world turned green and grainy. I found the spot about a mile in. The ground was chewed up. Tire tracks. Not just a sedan, heavy treads. Truck tires. And boot prints. I got out, moving silently. The air was cold. I knelt by the tire tracks. The tread pattern was distinctive. Deep lugs, wide stance. Like a police interceptor SUV. But it was what lay near the bushes that stopped me. I shined my flashlight beam, carefully shielded, at the ground. Blood. Dried, dark, soaking into the dirt. But it wasn't a pool like a fall would cause. It was a spray, and next to it, drag marks. 2 distinct lines in the dirt, like heels being pulled while the person was dead weight. This wasn't an accident scene. It was an interrogation site. I tracked the drag marks into the brush. They stopped at a large oak tree. The bark at the base was scuffed, fresh wood exposed. And there, glinting in the dirt, was something small and silver. I picked it up with a handkerchief. It was a bracelet. A cheap, silver charm bracelet with a little dangling star. Rubies. I gave it to her for her birthday. So Quinn was right. She didn't fall from Eagles Point. She was brought here. Dragged here. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind me. I didn't turn around. I froze, listening. The wind rustled the pines, but this was rhythmic. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. "You're trespassing, Logan." The voice came from the dark. I stood up slowly, turning. Sheriff Blake stood 10 yards away, leaning against a tree. He wasn't wearing his uniform now. He was in jeans and a dark jacket, holding a heavy maglite flashlight. His hand rested casually near his hip holster. "How did you know I was here?" I asked. "Tracker on your truck," Blake said simply. "Standard procedure for persons of interest. And a frantic father running around at 3 a.m. is definitely interesting." "This is where it happened," I said, holding up the bag bracelet. "I found her jewelry. And I found the blood." "Dear blood," Blake said, bored. "Poachers use this road. It's a problem. Poachers don't drag teenage girls," I countered. "I'm taking this to the state police." Blake laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "The state police? Who do you think calls me when they need a favor in this county? I am the state police out here, Logan. There is no one else." He took a step forward. "Go home to your wife. She needs you. She's fragile right now. She's been through a lot, keeping secrets." "What secrets?" "Ask her," Blake said. "Ask her why she deleted her call history from last night before you got home. Ask her why she was parked at the storage units on Route 9 an hour before Ruby got hurt." My stomach dropped. "The storage units?" "You're trying to get in my head," I said. I don't need to get in your head, Blake said. He shined his flashlight right in my eyes, blinding me for a second. I'm already in your house. Go home, Logan, before you find something you can't unsee. He turned and walked back into the dark. I stood there, heart hammering against my ribs. He let me go? He wasn't afraid of what I found. He was confident. Too confident. I got back in my truck. I needed to talk to Ivy, the witness Quinn mentioned. But first, I had to confront the one person who was supposed to be on my side. I drove home. When I walked through the front door, the house was dark. Natalie was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. She jumped when I entered. Where have you been? She asked. The service road, I said. I tossed the bracelet onto the table. It clattered loudly against the wood. I found this. Natalie stared at the bracelet. Her face crumbled. And I met your friend Blake. I said, my voice cold. He told me to ask you something. She looked up, terror in her eyes. He told me to ask what you were doing at the storage units on Route 9 last night. Natalie dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the floor, red liquid spreading like blood across the tile. She didn't speak. She just started to cry. And in that sobbing silence, I knew. The rot in this town didn't stop at the sheriff's office. It was right here in my kitchen. The red wine spread across the kitchen tiles, soaking into the grout, looking too much like the blood I'd just seen in the dirt. Natalie stood there, paralyzed, the shattered glass around her bare feet. Logan, she whispered. I can explain. Explain why you were at a storage unit an hour before our daughter's legs were broken. I stepped over the glass, closing the distance between us. Or explain why the sheriff knows your location better than your husband does. She flinched. I was looking for old documents. Tax papers. For the audit. At 8 p.m. on a Tuesday? Yes. I was stressed. You know how I get. Liar. The word hung there. I had never called her that before. Not in 18 years. We had fought, sure. We had yelled. But I had never looked at my wife and seen a stranger. I pulled out my phone. I'm going to the station. I'm going to get the dispatch tapes. If you have anything to tell me, anything real, say it now. She opened her mouth, then closed it. A tear tracked through her makeup. She shook her head. I turned and walked out. The drive to the sheriff's station was fueled by a cold, vibrating rage. I wasn't the husband anymore. I was the operator. Mission, intel. Obstacle, Blake. The station was a brick fortress in the center of town. I parked and walked in. The night shift desk sergeant was an older woman, sipping tea. She looked up, bored. Help you. I want the 911 recordings from yesterday. Case 4092. Incident involving Ruby Caldwell. She sighed, tapping her keyboard. Public records request forms are in the bin by the door. Takes 5 to 7 business days. I don't have 5 days, I said, leaning on the counter. My attorney says under the Freedom of Information Act, immediate family has right of access within 24 hours for medical emergencies. Is the system still updating? She paused, looking at me over her glasses. She recognized the tone. She knew I wasn't a civilian she could shoo away. Systems back up, she muttered. But I need authorization. You have my ID. I slapped my military ID on the counter. And you have my daughter in the ICU. Print the log or play the tape. She hesitated, then clicked a file. I can't give you a copy without the sheriff's signature. But I can play it. She turned the monitor slightly. She hit play. Static. Then a ring. Dispatcher. 911. What is your emergency? Silence. Dispatcher, hello? Is anyone there? Voice, male, distorted, send an ambulance. Service road 4. The girl fell. Dispatcher, sir? What girl? Sir. Click. I stared at the speaker. That's it. That's the only call we received, she said. That wasn't Ruby, I said. That was a man. He called it in. Maybe a hiker found her? A hiker who knew the service road number? A hiker who didn't stay on the line. I slammed my hand on the counter. Play the metadata. What time did that call come in? 9:15 p.m., she read. My blood ran cold. Ruby called me at 3:42 p.m. She was out there for 6 hours, I whispered. 6 hours before they called it in. The sergeant looked uncomfortable. Sir, maybe she was unconscious. No, I cut her off. She called me screaming at 3:42, and the sheriff was already there. I heard him. I looked at the screen again. Who was the responding officer? Unit 1 Alpha, she said. Sheriff Blake. And Unit 1 Bravo? I asked. Who was with him? She scrolled down. Her brow furrowed. That's odd. The log says Deputy Miller was assigned, but it's marked as canceled by dispatch. Blake responded alone. He was alone with her for 6 hours, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. He didn't find her. He had her. I grabbed the counter. Who was the watch commander tonight? It's Blake, technically. But he's off duty. Where does the Deputy Miller live? I can't give out personal. He lives on Elm, doesn't he? Blue House. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I left the station. I didn't go to Miller's house. Not yet. I needed something else. I drove back toward my house, but I didn't pull into the driveway. I parked down the street, killing the lights. I watched my own home. 10 minutes later, the garage door opened. Natalie's car backed out. She was moving fast. I waited until she turned the corner, then I followed. I kept my distance, running dark, using only the ambient streetlights. She drove erratically, speeding up, then slowing down. She headed out of town, past the high school, past the diner. She turned onto Route 9, the storage units. She pulled up to the keypad gate, punched in a code, and drove inside. I parked my truck in the brush across the road and hopped the fence. I moved through the rows of orange metal doors, counting the numbers until I saw her car. Unit 404. The door was rolled up. A light was on inside. I crept closer, staying in the shadows. I could hear her. She was crying again, that frantic, gasping sob. And she was talking to someone. You promised, she was saying. You said you wouldn't hurt her. I did what had to be done, Nat, a voice replied. A deep, smooth voice. Sheriff Blake. I froze. He was there. With my wife. In a storage unit at 3 a.m. I peeked around the corner. The unit wasn't full of boxes. It was set up like a small room. A desk, a cot, a cooler. A hideout. Natalie was pacing, holding her arms. Blake was sitting on the desk, cleaning his fingernails with a small knife. She called Logan. Natalie cried. He knows. He knows about the time gap. He knows about the bracelet. He knows nothing, Blake said calmly. He's a grunt. He follows orders. He'll yell for a few days, then he'll break. Or he'll have an accident too. Natalie stopped pacing. She looked at him. Don't you dare. You said if I gave you the money, you'd leave us alone. I changed my mind, Blake said. He stood up and walked over to her. He didn't hit her. He did something worse. He reached out and stroked her hair, tucking a strand behind her ear. And she let him. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. It wasn't fear. It was intimacy. Sick, twisted intimacy. You belong to me, Nat, Blake whispered. You and that money. Logan is just a tenant in your life. I own the mortgage. I stood in the dark, my hand resting on the knife in my pocket. My entire life, my marriage, my family, my trust, dissolved in that single moment. This wasn't just corruption. This was an affair. And my daughter paid the price for it. I wanted to kill him. The urge wasn't a thought. It was a physical reflex. My hand was already on the grip of my folding knife. My muscles coiled to spring. I could cover the 20 feet between us in 2 seconds. I could end Sheriff Blake before he even realized death was in the room. But then I saw Natalie kiss his hand. She took the hand that might have broken our daughter's legs, and she pressed her lips to his knuckles. It was a gesture of submission, of devotion, and that stopped me cold. If I killed him now, I'd go to prison for life. Ruby would be left with her, with the woman who was sleeping with the monster. Ruby would be alone, defenseless, with a mother who chose a predator over her own child. I couldn't protect Ruby from a cell. I slowly released the knife. I pulled out my phone instead. I disabled the flash and held it up, peering through the gap in the metal door frame. Click. I took a photo. Natalie leaning into him. Blake's hand on her waist. The storage unit number clearly visible. Click. I switched to video. The audio picked up their voices over the hum of the wind. What do we do about Logan? Natalie asked, pulling back slightly. He went to the station. He's asking about the logs. Let him ask, Blake said, his voice dripping with arrogance. Judge Dominic signed the warrant for his truck an hour ago. We'll find something. A few unregistered modifications? Maybe some stolen military gear we planned in the back? We'll lock him up for a weekend, discredit him. By the time he gets out, the town will think he's an unstable vet who snapped. He's not stupid, Blake, Natalie warned. No, he's worse. He's righteous. Men like that are easy to break because they believe in rules. I don't. Blake laughed. Go home. Nat, wash your face. Tell him you were, I don't know, visiting your mother's grave. Make him feel guilty. And the money? She asked. Leave it here. In the safe. He pointed to a heavy steel box in the corner of the unit. Natalie walked to the safe. She spun the dial. Left, right, left. I zoomed in with the camera. October 24th, 08, Ruby's birthday. She opened it. Inside wasn't just cash. There were stacks of it. Strapped bundles of hundreds. And files. Blue legal folders. She tossed a thick envelope inside and slammed it shut. Go, Blake said. She hurried to her car. Blake waited a moment, turned off the light, locked the rolling door, and walked to his cruiser parked in the shadows. I stayed crouched in the dirt until their taillights faded. My legs felt numb. My heart felt like a stone. I walked to the storage unit. The lock was a heavy-duty padlock. I didn't have my pick set, but I had the combination to the safe inside. October 24th, 08. I couldn't get in now. Too risky. Blake might circle back. I drove to the hospital instead. It was 4:30 a.m. The nurses were changing shifts. I flashed my ID and walked past the desk to the ICU. Ruby was awake. Just barely. Her eyes were half open, glazed with morphine. Her legs were elevated in a complex traction system of pulleys and weights. She looked so small in that bed. I sat down next to her. Hey, Ladybug, I whispered. Her eyes drifted to me. She blinked, trying to focus. Daddy, I'm here. I'm not leaving. She tried to move her hand, but wincing stopped her. It hurts. I know. I know it does. I leaned in close, checking the door. Ruby, look at me. I need to ask you something. It's important. She swallowed dryly. Okay. Did you fall? Her breath hitched. The heart monitor sped up. Beep, beep, beep. She shook her head. A tiny, terrified movement. Who did this? I asked. Tears welled up in her eyes and spilled over. He said he'd kill you. Who said that? The sheriff, she whispered. The name came out like a curse. He was waiting for me. On the road. He had a bat. Why? I asked. Why you? Mom, she choked out. My blood froze. What about Mom? I saw them, Ruby sobbed. I saw them at the lake house last week. Kissing. I took a picture. I was going to show you when you got home. The realization hit me like a train. Ruby wasn't hurt because she was in the wrong place. She was hurt because she was a witness. She had proof of the affair. And Natalie, my wife, she knew. Did Mom know he was coming for you? I asked, my voice trembling. Ruby closed her eyes, turning her head away. She told him I had the phone. She told him I took the picture. I sat back, the room spinning. It wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. Natalie didn't just cheat on me. She served our daughter up to her lover to protect their secret. She traded Ruby's legs for her own silence. Daddy, Ruby whispered. Are you mad at me? No, I said, wiping a tear from her cheek. No, baby. I'm not mad at you. I stood up. The sadness in my chest evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. The soldier was back. The father was back. And the husband? The husband died in that storage unit. I'm going to fix this, I told her. But I need you to be brave. Can you do that? She nodded. Good. Don't tell anyone we talked. Not the nurses. And especially not Mom. I kissed her forehead and walked out of the room. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the napkin Quinn gave me. This is Quinn, she answered on the first ring. You were right, I said. About everything. And I have the code to the safe. What safe? Blake's retirement fund, and his leverage. I walked out into the cool morning air. The sun was just starting to crest over the mountains. I need you to prepare a custody order. Emergency filing. Sole custody. On what grounds? Quinn asked. Endangerment, I said. And conspiracy to commit murder. Logan, wait. Do you have hard proof? Not yet, I said, watching the sun hit the windshield of my truck. But I know where it lives. And tonight, I'm going to go get it. The morning sun didn't bring warmth. It just exposed the grime of the night before. I sat in my truck in the hospital parking lot, watching the world wake up. People were going to work, buying coffee, walking dogs. They had no idea that a few miles away, the man sworn to protect them was breaking bones to keep secrets. I needed to move fast. Blake had mentioned a warrant for my truck. He was going to plant evidence. I started the engine and drove, but not home. I went to the only place in town that felt neutral, the 24-hour self-wash car bay on the edge of the county. I pulled into the bay, popped the hood, and started stripping my own vehicle. I found the tracker in 3 minutes. A magnetic GPS unit stuck inside the rear bumper well. I didn't destroy it. I stuck it onto the underside of a long-haul delivery truck parked at the diner next door. Let Blake chase a semi-truck to Florida while I worked. Then I drove to Quinn's office. It was a small, cluttered space above a bakery. Books were stacked everywhere. Quinn looked fresh, though I doubted she had slept. You look like hell, she said, handing me a coffee. I feel like it. I need that protective order. I drafted it, she said, sliding a document across her desk. But we have a problem. The judge on rotation for emergency motions this week. Let me guess, I said. Dominic. She nodded. Judge Dominic. He and Blake play golf every Sunday. If I file this, Dominic denies it, tips off Blake, and you lose the element of surprise. So we go around him. We can't. Jurisdiction rules. Quinn tapped her pen on the desk. Unless we have compelling evidence of immediate danger that forces a recusal. We need a statement. A sworn affidavit. From Ruby. She's a minor, but she's 16. Her testimony carries weight. If she swears on record that the sheriff assaulted her, and that her mother was complicit, Dominic has to pause. She's terrified, Quinn. She thinks he's going to kill me. He might, Quinn said bluntly. But if we don't get that statement, he definitely will. He'll frame you, lock you up, and Ruby goes back to Natalie. Is that what you want? The thought made me sick. Let's go. We drove to the hospital in Quinn's car, a beat-up Honda that wouldn't attract attention. When we got to Ruby's room, Natalie was there. She was sitting in the chair I had occupied hours before, holding a magazine she wasn't reading. When we walked in, she stood up, her face tightening. Who is she? Natalie asked, looking at Quinn. My lawyer, I said. Lawyer? Logan, we don't need lawyers. We need to focus on Ruby's recovery. She moved to block the bed, like a guard dog. I am focusing on her recovery, I said. Which is why I'm filing for sole custody. Natalie's face went white. You're insane. You can't take my daughter. She's not safe with you, I said, my voice low so Ruby wouldn't get upset. I know about the storage unit, Natalie. I know about the money. And I know about the picture Ruby took. Natalie froze. She looked at Ruby, then back at me. The fear in her eyes wasn't for Ruby. It was for herself. Get out, I said. You can't get out. I stepped forward. Or I show the video I took last night to the ethics board, the church, and your mother. Natalie grabbed her purse. She looked at Ruby one last time, not with love, but with calculation, and fled the room. Okay, Quinn said, pulling out a voice recorder. Ruby, hi. I'm Quinn. I'm going to help your dad. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Can you do that? Ruby looked at me. I nodded. You're safe. Just tell the truth. Ruby took a shaky breath. I went hiking. I wanted to take photos for my portfolio. I saw Blake's truck on the access road. I thought maybe someone was in trouble. She paused, licking her dry lips. I heard voices. Him and Mom. They were arguing about money. Mom was crying, saying she couldn't hide it anymore. Blake slapped her. Did you take a picture? Quinn asked gently. Yes. But the shutter sound, it was loud. They heard it. Blake looked right at me. He smiled. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen. What did you do? I ran. I ran as fast as I could. I made it to the ridge, but he cut me off with the truck. He got out. He had a metal bat. He said, "Time to learn a lesson about privacy, sweetheart." Ruby started crying again. He hit my legs first. He said he had to make it look like a fall. He broke them, one by one. And then he called Mom. He told her, "It's done. Come get your alibi." Quinn's face was pale. She clicked off the recorder. "That's it," Quinn said. "That's conspiracy to commit capital murder. Kidnapping. Aggravated battery. Is it enough for the judge?" I asked. "It's enough to burn the whole town down," Quinn said. "But we have to file it now? Before Blake realizes Natalie is gone." We left Ruby with a private security guard I hired over the phone, an old buddy from the teams who lived 2 towns over. I wasn't leaving her unguarded again. We drove to the courthouse. The building was an old stone structure with pillars that were supposed to represent justice. We walked into the clerk's office. Quinn slapped the folder on the counter. "Emergency motion for protective order and immediate custody change. Exhibit A is a sworn digital testimony." The clerk stamped it. "Judge Dominic is in chambers. I'll run it back." We waited. 10 minutes. 20. The door to the judge's chambers opened. Judge Dominic walked out. He was a small man with silver hair and a robe that looked too big for him. He held our file in his hand. He didn't look at Quinn. He looked at me. "Mr. Caldwell," he said smoothly, "I've reviewed your motion." And, "Denied," he said. He dropped the file into the trash bin next to his desk. "Excuse me." Quinn stepped forward. "You can't deny it without a hearing. That is a sworn statement from a victim. It is the statement of a drugged, traumatized minor under the influence of an estranged father suffering from PTSD," Dominic said, reciting the lie effortlessly. "I spoke with Sheriff Blake. He informed me of your mental state, Logan. He also informed me that you threatened your wife this morning." "That's a lie," I said. "Is it?" Dominic smiled. "Sheriff Blake is on his way here now. He has a warrant for your arrest. Violation of a domestic peace. I suggest you surrender peacefully." He turned and walked back into his office, locking the door. I looked at Quinn. "Run," she said. I didn't argue. I turned and sprinted for the exit. I hit the courthouse steps just as 2 sheriff's cruisers screeched to a halt at the curb. Blake stepped out of the lead car, hand on his gun. "Logan Caldwell," he shouted. "Get on the ground." I didn't get on the ground. I vaulted the stone railing, dropped 10 feet to the sidewalk below, and ran into the alleyway. I was a fugitive now. The law wasn't coming to help me. The law was hunting me. I ran until my lungs burned, weaving through back alleys and cutting across overgrown yards. The sound of sirens wailed behind me, a chorus of wolves closing in. I wasn't just running from an arrest. I was running from a cage designed to kill me. I made it to the edge of town, to an old salvage yard owned by a guy I knew from high school. I shimmied under a rusted fence and hid inside the hollow shell of a 1970s sedan. I pulled out my phone. For percent battery. I sent one text to Quinn. "Safe. Don't reply. Meet at Old Mill at midnight." Then I shut the phone off and waited. Darkness fell slowly. I spent the hours thinking. Thinking about Natalie. Thinking about the way she looked at Blake in that storage unit. She wasn't just scared. She was complicit. She had chosen her side. And now, Judge Dominic had chosen his. The triangle was complete. The law, the court, and the money. And I was the target in the middle. At 11:30 p.m., I moved. I hiked 3 miles through the woods to the old textile mill by the river. It was abandoned, a skeleton of brick and broken glass. Quinn was already there. She was pacing, hugging her arms against the cold. "You're insane," she whispered when I stepped out of the shadows. "They have an APB out on you. Armed and dangerous. Blake went on the local news an hour ago. He said you snapped. He said you beat Ruby in a fit of rage, and now you're hunting your wife." "He's projecting," I said. "He's telling them exactly what he did. It doesn't matter what the truth is, Logan. It matters what the story is. And right now, the story is that you're a monster. Quinn handed me a burner phone. Take this. They're tracking your real one. Where is Ruby? CPS took her. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? Child Protective Services. Since you're a fugitive and Natalie is in protective custody, the state took emergency guardianship. They moved her to a facility in the next county. They took my daughter? My voice rose, echoing off the brick walls. She's in traction. She can't be moved. They didn't care. Blake signed the transfer order. He wanted her away from you. And away from me. I paced the concrete floor, my hands shaking. Not from fear, from rage. I'm going to get her. No, Quinn grabbed my arm. If you go there, they will kill you. Blake has deputies guarding her room. They have orders to shoot on sight. Self-defense. So what do? Let them win. We fight smart, Quinn said. We need to break the triangle. We can't touch the judge yet. We can't touch Blake physically. So we go for the weak link. Natalie. No. Quinn shook her head. The witness. The one Blake fired. You mentioned a deputy. I remembered. Ivy. No. Ivy is the neighbor. The deputy is a guy named Grant. He used to be Blake's right hand until he grew a conscience. He lives in a trailer park 10 miles out. If anyone knows where the bodies are buried, literally, it's him. Let's go. We took Quinn's car. The drive was tense. Every pair of headlights felt like a patrol car. Grant's trailer was dark. A Confederate flag hung in the window, and empty beer cans littered the porch. I knocked. No answer. I tried the door. Locked. I kicked it. The cheap wood splintered, and the door swung open. Grant, I called out. The smell hit me first. Gunpowder and stale whiskey. I walked in, gun drawn. A spare Glock Quinn had in her glove box. The living room was tossed. Cushions slashed. Drawers pulled out. And on the wall, spray painted in red, snitch. We're too late, Quinn whispered. I moved to the back bedroom. Empty. But on the floor, under the bed, I saw something. A cell phone. I picked it up. Screen cracked, but it powered on. Grant didn't leave this, I said. You don't leave your phone if you're running. I scrolled through the messages. The last one was sent yesterday, to an unsaved number. I'm done carrying your water, Blake. I kept the receipts from the evidence locker. If you don't pay me what you owe, I send them to the AG. Blackmail, Quinn said, reading over my shoulder. He tried to blackmail Blake. And Blake cleaned house, I said. Suddenly, blue lights flashed through the front window. Damn it, I hissed. They found us. Back door, Quinn shouted. We bolted for the rear exit. We burst out into the night just as the front door was kicked in. Clear the room. I heard a voice shout. Check the perimeter. We scrambled under the trailer, crawling through the mud and insulation. Boots stomped on the floorboards above our heads. He was just here, a voice said. It was Miller, the young deputy. Phone is gone. Find them, another voice growled. Blake. And burn this place down. Make it look like a meth lab explosion. Quinn stifled a gasp. I put a hand over her mouth. We watched through the skirting as Blake walked down the steps. He dropped a lit flare onto the porch. The accelerant they must have pre-poured caught instantly. Whoosh. The trailer went up in flames. We belly crawled through the tall grass, the heat searing our backs. We made it to the tree line and didn't stop running until we reached Quinn's car hidden down the road. As we sped away, watching the orange glow in the rearview mirror, I realized the stakes had changed. This wasn't just about custody anymore. He killed him, Quinn said, her voice shaking. He killed Grant. And he'll kill us next, I said, gripping the wheel. Unless we find those receipts Grant mentioned. Where would he hide them? I thought about the text. I kept the receipts. Grant was a mechanic before he was a cop, I said. He worked on cars. So, where do you hide something nobody looks at? I smiled grimly. In the gas tank. You think the evidence is in his truck? I think Grant knew he was a target. He wouldn't keep it in the trailer. I looked at Quinn. We need to find Grant's truck. Before the fire department does. The game of cat and mouse was over. Now, we were hunting ghosts. The fire department sirens wailed in the distance, heading toward the burning trailer. It was a perfect distraction. While Blake and his deputies watched the flames destroy the crime scene, we had a small window to find Grant's truck. He drove a Ford F-150, Quinn said, typing furiously on her tablet as I drove. Registered to his sister's address, but he kept it parked at the impound lot he managed on the side. Grant's towing. Impound lot, I said. That's where he'd feel safe, surrounded by junk. We drove past the fire trucks, heading the opposite direction. The impound lot was a graveyard of twisted metal surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. I rammed the gate with Quinn's Honda. The chain snapped, and we skidded inside. There, I pointed. In the far corner, under a flickering street lamp, sat a beat-up blue Ford. I jumped out. The doors were locked. I smashed the driver's side window with my elbow and unlocked it. Check the glove box, I ordered Quinn. I'm checking the fuel tank. I crawled under the truck. The gas tank looked normal, but the bolts holding the skid plate were shiny. Recently turned. I pulled out my multi-tool and cranked on the bolts. They gave way. I dropped the heavy metal plate. Taped to the top of the tank, wrapped in 3 layers of heavy-duty plastic, was a thick envelope. Got it, I said, sliding out. Logan, Quinn hissed. Headlights. A cruiser pulled into the lot in trance, spotlights sweeping the rows of cars. They were checking known locations. Get in, I said. We scrambled back into the Honda. I didn't turn on the lights. I reversed deep into a row of crushed sedans, praying the rust would hide us. The cruiser rolled past, crunching gravel. The spotlight beam washed over the hood of our car, missing us by inches. It paused. Then, miraculously, it moved on. The cruiser turned around and left. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Open it, I said. Quinn tore open the plastic. Inside wasn't money. It was a logbook and a USB drive. She opened the notebook. Oh my God. What? It's a ledger, she said, reading by the light of the dashboard. Dates. Names. Amounts. Judge D, $10,000, case dismissed. Mayor, $5,000, permit approved. Blake, $50,000, seizure. Seizure? I asked. Drug money. Civil asset forfeiture, Quinn said. They pull over out-of-state drivers, claim they smell drugs, seize the cash in the car, and never file charges. They're robbing people legally. She plugged the USB into her tablet. Audio files, she said. Dozens of them. Grant recorded his briefings. She clicked one dated 2 weeks ago. Blake's voice filled the car. The Caldwell girl is a problem, Grant. She saw us at the lake house with the cash. If she talks, the feds come knocking. Grant, she's a kid, Blake. You can't touch her. Blake, I won't touch her. I'll just ensure she has a bad fall. Something to keep her in the hospital and her daddy distracted until we move the money offshore. Pain is a great silencer. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. He admitted it. He planned it. It wasn't just to cover up the affair. It was to cover up the money laundering. Ruby was collateral damage in a multi-million-dollar theft ring. We have him, Quinn whispered. This is it. This is the smoking gun. It's not enough, I said darkly. What? This is a confession. It's a recording of a dead man, I said. Defense attorneys will rip it apart. They'll say it's AI or edited. We need a living witness. Who? Natalie. Quinn stared at me. Your wife? She's with them. She's with them because she's scared, I said. But she doesn't know about this. She thinks this is just about an affair. She doesn't know Blake was planning to hurt Ruby for money. She thinks it was a crime of passion or necessity. So if she hears this, I pointed to the tablet. If she hears Blake calling our daughter a problem to be silenced, she breaks. She's weak, Quinn, but she's a mother. Somewhere under that fear is a mother. It's a trap, Logan. If you contact her, they trace you. I know. I started the car. That's why we're going to make them come to us. I drove to a payphone outside a desolate gas station. I dialed Natalie's cell. She answered on the first ring. Logan. She sounded frantic. Where are you? They say you burned down a trailer. They say you killed a deputy. Shut up and listen, I said. I know everything. I have Grant's ledger. I have the recordings. Silence. I'm going to the FBI in the morning, I lied. But I'm giving you one chance. Meet me at the old bridge. Alone. If you want to save yourself from prison, bring Ruby's medical file. The real one. I can't, she sobbed. Blake is here. Then tell him you're meeting me to talk me down, I said. Tell him whatever you want. But be there in an hour. Or you go down with him. I hung up. You just told Blake where we are, Quinn said, terrified. Exactly, I said, checking the load in my Glock. He's arrogant. He won't send a SWAT team. He wants to kill me himself. He'll come alone, or with just a few trusted men. He wants to end this tonight. And what's the plan? We use the bridge, I said. It's a choke point. We separate Blake from his backup. We get Natalie to hear the tape. And then, we take him down. It was a suicide mission. I knew that. But I also knew that as long as Blake was breathing and wearing a badge, my daughter would never be safe. I looked at Quinn. You stay back. Record everything. If I die, you upload it all. Logan, go. I drove toward the bridge. The fog was rolling in off the river, thick and white. Perfect for an ambush. I parked the car in the middle of the bridge and got out. I stood in the headlights, waiting. 10 minutes later, headlights appeared on the other side. A single SUV. It stopped. The door opened. Natalie stepped out. She looked terrified, clutching a folder. And behind her, stepping out of the darkness with a shotgun resting on his shoulder, was Sheriff Blake. Honey, I'm home, he called out, his voice echoing over the water. The fog swirled around the bridge, thick as cotton. Below us, the river churned, black and cold. Blake walked toward me with the casual swagger of a man who owned the night. Natalie trailed behind him, looking like a ghost in her pale coat. You're a hard man to kill, Logan, Blake said, racking the slide of his shotgun. CHCHK. Grant tried to get clever, too. Look what happened to him. Grant had a conscience, I said, keeping my hands visible but empty. You don't. Conscience is expensive, Blake smirked. It gets in the way of business. Is that what Ruby was? I asked, raising my voice so Natalie could hear. Business. Ruby was an unfortunate complication, Blake said. Collateral damage. Tell her, I said, nodding at Natalie. Tell her why you really did it. It wasn't about your little affair, was it? Natalie looked up, confusion warring with fear on her face. What is he talking about, Blake? He's stalling. Nat, don't listen to him. Blake raised the shotgun, aiming it at my chest. He broke her legs because she saw the money, I shouted. Civil forfeiture cash. Millions of it. Stolen from innocent drivers on the interstate. She walked in on you counting it at the lake house. That's why he hurt her. Not to protect you. To protect his retirement fund. Natalie froze. Money? But you told me it was because she had the pictures of us. You said she was going to ruin my reputation. I lied. Blake said, his tone bored. It's what I do. Now step aside, Natalie. You used me. Her voice broke. I let you hurt my daughter because I thought you loved me. I thought we were protecting our future. We didn't have a future, sweetheart. You were just the bank manager. Blake laughed cruelly. Judge Dominic and I, we have a future. In the Caymans. You were just local entertainment. Something snapped in Natalie. The fear vanished, replaced by a mother's primal fury. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just lunged. She threw herself at Blake, grabbing the barrel of the shotgun. You bastard, she shrieked. Boom. The gun went off. The shot went wide, blowing a chunk out of the asphalt. I moved. I sprinted the 20 yards between us while they wrestled. Blake was strong, but Natalie was fueled by pure, unadulterated hate. She clawed at his face, raking her nails down his eyes. Get off me. Blake roared, backhanding her. She flew backward, hitting the guardrail hard. She crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Blake spun around, raising the gun toward me. But I was already there. I tackled him. We hit the pavement with a bone-jarring thud. The shotgun skittered away into the dark. This wasn't a clean fight. It was a brawl. He was bigger, heavier. He punched me in the jaw, and I saw stars. I drove my knee into his ribs, feeling something crack. We rolled toward the edge of the bridge. You think you can beat me? Blake grunted, hands closing around my throat. I am the law in this town. Not anymore, I choked out. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the one thing I had kept from my service days. A tactical flashbang. I didn't pull the pin. I smashed the metal casing into his temple. He groaned, his grip loosening. I rolled on top of him, pinning his arms with my knees. I pulled my Glock from my waistband and pressed the barrel against his forehead. Give me a reason, I whispered. Please. Blake stared up at me, blood running into his eye. And then, he started to laugh. Do it, he wheezed. Kill me. And then what? You go to prison for murdering a sheriff. Dominic buries the evidence. Your daughter goes into the system forever. You lose, Logan. Even when you win, you lose. He was right. If I pulled the trigger, I became the villain he painted me to be. The unhinged vet. The murderer. I took a deep breath. The hardest thing I ever did as a SEAL wasn't killing a target. It was letting one live. I pistol whipped him. Hard. His head snapped back, and he went limp. Unconscious. I stood up, panting, wiping blood from my lip. Logan. I turned. Natalie was pulling herself up by the railing. Her face was bruised, her coat torn. She looked at Blake's body, then at me. Is he dead? She whispered. No, I said. He's going to prison. And me? She asked. I looked at her. The woman I had loved for half my life. The woman who had betrayed me, betrayed our daughter, and then, at the very end, tried to save it. That's up to a jury, I said coldly. But you're going to testify. You're going to tell them everything. About the judge. About the money. About Ruby. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I will. I promise. Suddenly, my burner phone buzzed. It was Quinn. Logan, look at the river. I walked to the railing. Below, in the black water, I saw lights. Not searchlights. Blue lights. Police boats. And on the far side of the bridge, a convoy of vehicles was approaching. Not sheriff's cruisers. Black SUVs. State police. And FBI. How? I whispered. Quinn walked out of the shadows from the other end of the bridge, holding her phone up. I didn't just record it, she said, smiling tiredly. I live-streamed it. To the state attorney general's private line. I called in a favor from law school. She walked up to me. They heard everything, Logan. The confession. The money laundering. The threat. It's over. I looked at the flashing lights surrounding us. For the first time in days, they didn't look like a threat. They looked like rescue. But then, Blake stirred. He groaned, his hand moving to his ankle. Ankle holster. Logan! Natalie screamed. I spun around. Blake raised a small revolver, his eyes filled with madness. If I go down, he snarled, you're coming with me. Bang! The shot rang out. I flinched, waiting for the impact. But it didn't hit me. Natalie gasped. She stumbled back, clutching her stomach. Red bloomed across her white coat. She fell. No! I shouted. I kicked the gun out of Blake's hand and stomped on his wrist, shattering it. He screamed. I dropped to my knees beside Natalie. She was pale, her breathing shallow. Nat, I pressed my hands over the wound. Stay with me. She looked up at me, her eyes unfocused. Tell Ruby. She whispered. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to fix it. Don't talk, I said. Medics are coming. It's okay, she smiled faintly. This is justice. Her eyes rolled back. The bridge swarmed with agents. Hands pulled me away. Paramedics rushed in. Blake was dragged away in cuffs, screaming curses. I stood there, watching them work on my wife, feeling the cold river wind cut through me. The war was over, but the casualty count was just starting. Natalie's blood still stained my hands when the dawn broke. The bridge had turned into a full-blown crime scene. FBI vans, state police cruisers, hazmat techs mapping every inch. The river below was crawling with divers, searching for whatever Blake might have dumped there. I stood by an ambulance as a paramedic wrapped my bruised knuckles, though I barely felt anything anymore. Natalie was gone before they even loaded her into the van. Her last words stuck in my head like a splinter. This is justice. Blake was handcuffed to a stretcher 20 feet away, half conscious, his face purpled with bruises. He still wore that smug half-smile. Even with a shattered wrist, the man looked untouchable. That's when Quinn walked over, her phone still in her hand, eyes locked on the agents talking nearby. "He's trying to cut a deal," she whispered. He told them he was just following orders, that the real mastermind was Judge Dominic. "That snake," I muttered. "Exactly. Dominic's our next target. But this time, the court's on our side." She handed me a small flash drive. "The live stream is archived. Video, audio, full GPS trace. We take it to the state capitol, hand it straight to the Attorney General. If everything lines up with the ledger, this whole network collapses." I glanced at Blake. "He won't survive prison. The cops he crossed will finish the job." "That's karma," Quinn said, her voice steady. By noon, the FBI agent in charge, a tall woman named Agent Harper, released me under protective custody. They needed Ruby's testimony to solidify the case. I told them I wasn't going anywhere until I saw her myself. We drove straight to the medical center where Ruby had been moved. She was sitting up this time, her legs still encased in stabilizing frames, but her eyes alert again. "Hey, kiddo," I said softly. Her face lit up for the first time in days. "Dad, they said you got him." "Yeah," I said, taking her hand gently. "He's never going to hurt you again." She looked away, voice trembling. "Mom," I swallowed hard. "She saved me, Ruby. In the end, she saved both of us." Tears fell silently down her cheeks. She nodded. "Can I go home soon?" "Soon," I promised. "But not that house. We're starting fresh." I left Quinn with Ruby while I stepped outside to the hospital courtyard. The air was clearer. The sirens had finally stopped. A news van rolled up near the entrance. The reporter recognized me instantly. Cameras pointed my way, microphones ready. "Mr. Caldwell, is it true Sheriff Blake was part of a criminal ring with a sitting judge?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Quinn walked out behind me, holding up the ledger and flash drive in clear FBI evidence bags. "Ask me that question in 12 hours, she said to them, after the governor's press conference. By late evening, the footage played on every major news channel in the state. Blake's sloppy confession on the bridge, Grant's recordings, the ledger pages under FBI evidence lights. Judge Dominic's world unraveled on live TV. He was arrested in his own courtroom, still wearing his robe, photographers catching every second. I watched it all from Ruby's hospital room. She was asleep, the TV softly flickering over her small, bandaged legs. For the first time in months, I felt like breathing didn't hurt. Quinn came in quietly, a small smile ghosting her lips. "It's done. Dominic's finished. The AG thanked us personally. He wants your statement for the record." I nodded. "He can have it. I just want normal again." "You'll get there," she said. "But Logan, you understand what you just did, right? You didn't just clear your name. You cleaned out half the courthouse. That ledger is going to rewrite this county." I looked at my daughter, her chest rising and falling gently. "Good," I said. "Then it was worth every scar." Quinn's expression softened. "You could take this national. Write a book, testify, turn it into something bigger." I shook my head. "No cameras. No fame. I've lost enough to the spotlight. I just want peace." She nodded, stepping closer. "Then here's one last thing. Natalie's confession. She left a voice memo on her phone before meeting us. She must have known how it would end. She said, 'If Logan finds this, tell him I never meant for any of this to touch Ruby. I was blind, but not beyond saving. I loved him until my last breath.'" The words hit harder than any bullet. For all her sins, she'd found enough courage to make things right in the end. "Thank you," I said quietly. Quinn touched my arm. "Go home, Logan. Get your daughter out of here. Let the rest of us handle the cleanup." I sat by Ruby's bedside that night, watching the world outside her window go quiet. The flashing red and blue lights faded one by one. The nightmare was ending. I looked down at her sleeping face, her small fingers resting over mine. "It's over, Ladybug," I whispered. "Nobody's going to hurt you again." Outside, in the distance, thunder rolled over the mountains. But this time, it didn't sound like danger. It sounded like change. 3 months later, the courtroom smelled of dust and closure. The walls still carried the shadow of corruption, but it wasn't Blake's courtroom anymore. He sat at the defendant's table, thinner now, wrists chained, suit wrinkled, and spirit drained. The arrogance was gone. The empire he built on fear had collapsed under its own weight. Ruby sat beside me in her wheelchair, braces running down both legs. She looked stronger and older, in a way no child should have to. Quinn sat behind us, flipping through notes, ready for the final verdict. Judge Harper from the state circuit presided over this one, a woman who didn't flinch when Blake tried his usual charm. The room was full. Reporters, survivors, families who'd been robbed by the false seizures. People Blake had once scared into silence. "The court," Judge Harper said, voice steady as steel, "finds the defendant, former Sheriff Blake Porter, guilty on all counts: corruption, assault, and aggravated battery. Sentenced to life without parole." The gavel came down with a heavy crack. Every breath I'd been holding for months finally released. Ruby gripped my hand and whispered, "We won, didn't we?" "We did," I said, my throat tightening. "We finally did." As they dragged Blake out, he turned and looked at me. That same smirk tried to rise, but it didn't reach his eyes. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel anger. I just felt distance, the kind that comes when a nightmare finally fades with daylight. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. I stopped for just one, their cameras rolling. "What happens now, Mr. Caldwell?" I smiled faintly. "Now? I teach my daughter how to live again. I learn how to forgive myself for not seeing the monster in front of my door sooner. The rest, the pain, the fear, stays here. It ends here." 6 months later, we moved to a quiet lakeside town 3 states over. No flashing lights. No secrets hiding behind badges. Every morning, I push Ruby's wheelchair to the end of the dock. The lake water is still and silver in the sunrise. She tosses a pebble in and counts the ripples, small waves spreading outward until they touch every edge of the water. "Think that's how healing works?" she once asked. "Maybe," I said. "It starts small, but it keeps going." One evening, I sat at my desk, recording a message for the YouTube followers who had been writing me, asking when the next story was coming. "Hey, everyone," I said softly, the camera light blinking red. This journey was about pain, justice, and redemption. About a father who fought an entire system not with bullets, but with truth. I looked out the window where Ruby laughed at something on her tablet, a sound that reminded me why I'd survived all of it. "So tell me," I continued, leaning closer, "where are you watching from tonight? What city, what country, what place do you call home? Write it in the comments below. And also tell me, what kind of stories speak to you most? Powerful revenge? Emotional healing? Family redemption? I want to know, because the stories you love, they're the ones I'll bring to life next time." A soft pause. If you connected with this story, if it made you feel something, support it the best way you can. Hit that like button, subscribe to stay here with us, and share it with someone who believes in quiet justice. This channel isn't just stories. It's voices, it's hearts, and sometimes it's healing. I smiled, the last scene of the truth still echoing in my voice. Until we meet again in the next epic revenge and emotional thriller, take care of yourself. Hold your loved ones tight, because sometimes survival is the greatest revenge. The recording stopped. The story was finished.